nice to meet you. I've heard a lot about you. I've heard a lot about Vamp. I know we've worked together quite a bit, so it's really great to get a chance to just have a chat and learn more about not only Vamp but also you specifically. So I think that's a pretty interesting thing. I think the easiest, quickest way that I could summarize Vamp, it's a cloud native release orchestration platform.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Bingo. You've got all the buzzwords there.
Every one of them. So we can come back into that a little bit later because I think that's pretty interesting as well. But I'm kind of interested a little bit in how you got to this point in your career. I think for any of us, given all the career options we have, there's a lot of easy routes we could take. But we go into this entrepreneurial lifestyle, which is like definitely not the path of least resistance. But I'm curious, you came from, it looks like, kind of media, marketing, digital advertising background. How did you end up from there, from the glamorous world of digital media to infrastructure and testing and canary releases? What was that path like, and what brought you there as well? Maybe a quick background on you.
There's this guy in the UK, he's called Sir Clive Sinclair. He's actually a sir. Okay. And he's the inventor of the ZX Spectrum, which is a home computer. And when I was a little kid, then these home computers, the BBC, Akron Electric, Commodores, they started appearing. Yeah. And I was like super intrigued because there was this in the Netherlands, we had this, it's called the Hobby Computer Club, HCC. Yeah. And they were broadcasting computer programs on the radio. So you started hearing these song. I was like, what's this? And then you could basically solder your own home computer at home. So you just this box, which you could create your own computer. And I never managed to do that, but I was intrigued. So I started saving up, bought this home computer. And then I plugged it in, and nothing happened. And I was like, what is this? Then this little cursor was blinking. And then it turned out you need to program it. And for me, this was kind of like a epiphany. It's like, okay, so these are basically tools that you can kind of mold. You can basically, but you need to mold them because they give you like insane powers, gaming, and I did like phreaking, where we basically to all kinds of old Bell telephone PBXs, but you need to program these things, and then they can do a lot of stuff. And so for me, this is kind of like a theme all the time, because I like to apply technology to useful things, like free phone calls all over the world, playing cool games, and so I started programming, learning all these things, and then at some point I had to make a decision. So I thought I wanted to study computer sciences, like informatics, it's called here in the Netherlands, at the university, and then it turned out it was like mathematics. I was like, no, that's not what I like. And then I was like, what is it? And then there was this study which is like a little bit more applied, which was called business informatics. And it was the first study where it kind of the worlds of business and IT kind of started to merge. We also got like things like sociology, psychology. The idea was that we would build expert systems. So we could go, we could stop working. It's the same thing that we now have with AI and machine learning. Everybody will stop working, and then the expert systems will basically do all the things for us. So it was, I think, the early days of Java programming, object-oriented stuff came along, but we still learned assembler. We actually still had mainframes where we programming COBOL, with all the stuff and the matrix printers. So I kind of rolled into that area of business and IT. And then I think when I was almost done, the internet kind of happened in the Netherlands. So some study friends came over and said to me, like, we started a company and we will be building websites, and do you want to join? And I was like, okay, sounds nice. So well, we were one of the first like agencies, internet agencies in the Netherlands. We started with 4 guys, and then 1 year later we were 40, and all of our friends basically came in, and we hired this big ass building. And I think we even went to the UK to photograph the latest Jaguar cars, like the prototypes, and QuickTime VR, all that stuff was awesome. Yeah, we did mainly work for advertising agencies. You know, really the big advertising agencies with the big brands, and then you need to work with these creative people, you know, and they don't have a clue about technology, but they have ideas, and they were like, oh, can we do this stuff, and can we do this? And then everybody would say no, and then I would say, well, maybe if we kind of start abusing basically the systems a little bit, we can make this work. And so I kind of went into content management systems, e-commerce platforms, because, you know, the pattern, and that's related to what we do with FAMP. In the end, people don't want to be bothered with IT telling them it's not possible, it's hard, I don't have time for you, security, blah, 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 blah. We know it's important, but we need to get things done. Right. So what happened is basically people said, you're creating this website for me, but why can't I just do it myself? Just like with Word, can I make this thing bold? And then at some point we would make a content management system. Say, I do it yourself. E-commerce, can I make a landing page? Can I manage my own product portfolio? So this is kind of my theme. How can we apply technology, complex technology, make it easy to use for people that need to deliver value to end users? Yeah. This is how I kind of ended up through some kind of things, because I started a company, a little boutique internet company. We built content management systems for NXP, Philips, T4 Telecom, all kinds of retailers. Clicks and Bricks was a thing. We became part of a direct marketing company, and then we did a lot of stuff for Unilever, Procter and Gamble, and then at some point I sold the company. Couldn't retire yet, unfortunately, and then I went to Mirabeau, which is now a Cognizant company. Mm-hmm. And they were the #1 full-service internet agency in the Netherlands, and they serviced companies like ING Bank, Transavia, Funda, which is like the big housing real estate thing. Yep. And I became a strategic director. I didn't know what it meant. They said, like, you're a strategic director. I was like, what? But it's kind of like a consultant, high-level consultant to do like transformations. From on-prem to cloud. Yeah. And basically what happened is all these companies started moving to cloud, and then at some point they started blocking, because the promise was cloud will make you scalable, make you elastic, your pricing will be, the cost structure will be much better. Yeah. But you need to keep the shop open. When you're Transavia or an airliner, you cannot say, okay, let's shut this website down for a week, and then we're going to migrate. And, so the challenges that we solved with FAMP were basically born during that period of 4 years at Mirabeau. Yeah. How to do like day 2, 0 downtime upgrading, how to do dependency management between a lot of different applications and services, how to make the thing scale in a smart way based on real traffic patterns and usage patterns, not only technical stuff, and how to make everything an experiment. Yeah. Basically, how to basically validate everything with real data, not a hunch, not some feeling, but really, can we measure this thing?
Right.
Is this update actually working? So that's kind of the story how I went from ZX Spectrum to FAM and infrastructure.
Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, it sounds like you come more or less from the same sort of generation of the industry that I do, which is like really coming up in the middle of that .com era. That is an amazing time. The luck is a big part of success, and I think part of that luck was having been around for that. Watching that stuff emerge, being at the right place. I remember seeing Mosaic web browser for the first time and thinking, "What's that?" And so it's kind of cool that, like, if I compare it with my experience, I come from the boring infrastructure side, right? So for me, it's very normal, and you came from really like the user side. You're thinking of, there was a lot of media, a lot of saying marketing, and then slowly you start to realize the infrastructure is important. That without paved roads, you can't drive anywhere. So
we always talk about non-functionals. So basically, just like security is release management or the process of updating, that's crucial because we're shifting from a project to a product mindset in most companies, where you're constantly iterating and improving, which basically comes from the fact that SaaS and mobile apps are doing this all the time. So if you're like a company that came from a project mindset where there's a start and a finish and champagne, and then you kind of lean back, this is so hard because, I mean, your competitors are doing updates every week. Your clients are demanding like bug fixes for the apps every day. So you're like 8 months project kind of mindset. So how do you solve this thing? So the non-functionals are crucial, because otherwise you cannot compete anymore in this new world.
No, absolutely. And how did you meet your co-founder, Herman? Herman Heinen, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
Your co-founder. I'm not sure if he's working day to day with you, but he's obviously been a big part of it. How did you meet him? How did you guys team up and form now Vamp?
I've got two co-founders, by the way, Herman and Tim. Tim is now living in Berlin. He's not he was an ex-co-founder, let's say. He's still a good friend of mine. No, the story is actually funny. Tim and I met through online forum, which sounds maybe a little bit dodgy because these days you have Tinder and all that stuff. But we met through a synthesizer forum. So because we both make music and electronic music, and I'm a DJ for, I don't know, 20 plus years. So we kind of met, and we discovered that we lived like 3 blocks from each other in Utrecht. And so we started making music together. And we had a record label even, with releases out. And Tim, he's an infrastructure like you. He's like did all the banks and all the stuff. He was like low level, HA proxy, load balancers, F5s, Barracudas, all that stuff. And I came from another angle, the application level. And then we made music, but of course we're nerds, so we talk about stuff. And then one day he came to me and said, "This is nice. Take a look. Docker Compose." I was like, Docker? What's that? I think it was even before the logo. So the whale was not there yet, was 0. something. And he said, like, this is nice. It's like a zip file for application. So you can put configuration in there, runtime, and then it will basically, you run it on a machine. I was like, okay, that solves one interesting thing. Works on my machine. But then he said, but you can also scale it. Look, and there was this thing, Marathon, which is part of the Mesos Marathon thing, which is Mesosphere around the time, currently D2IQ. And he said, like, look, you can scale it up and down, make more instances. And he was like an expert with load balancers, HA proxy. So he said, like, we can make a little slider. And I was like, whoa. And I started thinking, like, can we make this for e-commerce platforms so we can dynamically scale things up and down and shift traffic and all the things that we currently call canary releasing and service meshes? We did that, and we made a little prototype. And then I said, like, I'm gonna quit my job. We need to do this. And then Tim said, like, yeah. I said, wait, if I can get us money in so we can work for 6 months on this, will you join me? And I said, like, that's a deal. If you can give us like 6 months of money, of funding, pre-seed, I'm in. So then something funny happened. Herman tried to poach me before I went to Mirabeau, because I sold the company. I was like, what shall I do? And then Herman, he is the owner of 40 people kind of internet agency called Enrise in the Netherlands. And he tried to hire me. So I talked to him, and then, but I was also talking to Mirabeau. At some point I was like, I'm going for the big boys, and sorry, Herman, but we kept in touch. So for whatever reason, Herman kind of appeared again. And I was like, Herman, me and a friend have this great idea. Maybe you want to take a look at it. And he looked at it and he says, like, if there's two people that can pull this off, it's you. So what about me giving you a little bit of pre-seed funding so you can work for 6 months on this thing? And I was like, yeah, that sounds good. Tim, quit your job. So Tim quit his job at Xabia. I quit my job at Cognizant, and we started doing this thing. So Herman and I kind of, we knew each other from trying to work together. And this was like the opportunity to work together.
So you really got to know each other now, huh? Working that closely.
Yeah, and Herman is a smart cookie, so he has also like an engineering development background. And I'm not sure if that's on my side.
I think it was mine. I have to figure out how to mute these things.
But,
Zoom, yeah.
Yeah, no, but it's he's like an entrepreneur and an engineer, and so yeah, it's really nice to start working together, and still is, and also with Tim. I mean, I will plug his new thing, Checkly HQ, which is an API monitoring tool, and he's doing really well on it, and so we're still in touch, and we share like experiences and talk with each other.
Yeah,
that's nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were actually the CEO until a few years ago, and then Nico came on board, Nico Vierhout.
Yeah.
How did that's actually a very not exactly brave. It's like a lot of entrepreneurs have trouble. You know, you have to let go a little bit, and
you see, I've got a little bit more gray hair, so that's an interesting topic, by the way. Like, what kind of learnings do you have? So I think most engineers and tech people have the tendency to do stuff by themselves, because that's why we do these things. Hey, look what I can do with code and with technology. But at some point, you need to realize that you might not be the smartest in the room, that you can only scale until a certain level. For me, that realization became quite early, because I was always kind of working in between people and kind of like a translation channel. So I always need other people around. I see myself more as a director, kind of like the movie directors. They have a vision. Yeah. They kind of are a little bit hands-on, because they need to understand how things can work. But then they hire the best like camera guys and writers and lighting and all that stuff. So that's kind of my thing also. So I learned the hard way, because you can only do so much, and when it grows and scales, you need to have other people involved. And the earlier you involve these people, the better they can kind of incorporate your vision and work with you.
Yeah, I mean, that shows a lot of insight. You know, like I say, as you know, many entrepreneurs have trouble letting go, and to recognize that is actually, I see it as removing myself as the bottleneck, right?
Yeah.
And, you mentioned you made the comparison of a director. My experience, there's usually three characters in a startup. There's a visionary, which I think is you're describing someone who kind of sees the big vision. You have a sort of a perfectionist, the details person.
Yeah.
And then you have a salesperson, somebody who just knows everybody. And in fact, so I've lived here in Amsterdam for a while, and you have these corner bars, these brown cafes, and you almost always have the same people running those too. Someone who's at the bar that you like to have a beer with, and somebody making sure they're not giving away too many free beers.
Yeah. It's basically the hacker, the hustler, and the hipster kind of thing. Yeah. No. I mean, when I was doing this with Tim, it made sense to be more of the CEO role, because Tim is we're doing infrastructure stuff, so he's much more hands-on and experienced in the technical side of things. So you need to. We were part of Startup Bootcamp, or our part of Startup Bootcamp, which is an accelerator here in Europe. So yeah, at some point they start asking, who's the CEO, who's the CTO, and then well, okay, I'm going to be CEO. Although I'm quite technical, but okay, but I'm also more of a hustler kind of thing. I like to, if I believe in something, I can sell it. Kind of. I really believe in what we do, and then I can explain it, and I can just sell it basically. So it's more like a consultative selling kind of thing, I guess. But then when Tim left, because his girlfriend went to Berlin, she could work there for the national broadcasting organization, which was a once in a lifetime opportunity. So we kind of joined her. So then it was kind of like, okay, what to do? And at some point I was like, but keeping the company kind of afloat, which in my mind, CEO is basically your main responsibility is to keep the company healthy. Basically make sure there's enough money, there's enough runway, the right things are happening. And I was like, okay, but I'm more of a product guy. I'm more in love with the product and consultative selling around what the product can do or should do. So we need to bring in somebody that's more focused on organizing the organization basically. And then Nico was running around somewhere. He was at Liberty Global at the time, and he was looking for some new opportunities. He didn't. I think he had the opportunity to go to Silicon Valley around the time, but he has like younger kids at the time. So he was like, I don't know. But he was running, I think, the DevOps kind of department over there. So he understood all these challenges, and then he came to a presentation I did, and then he was like, "Wow, this basically checks all the boxes. I know these problems. I have experienced them myself. So let's hook up." And so we started talking, and Nico started talking because he can talk, and I can talk too. So we started talking, and at some point we were like, "Let's do this." And I asked him, like, do you want to be my CEO so I can focus on the product side of things? Like my formal role CTO, maybe you would need to call it CPO or something, with what's in these three letters. But it's good to have a good like balance of responsibilities and also mindset.
I have one of these sort of one-liners I say all the time that a title is like a necktie that you wear it for other people, not for yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So and another theme that I've come across in talking to other early stage tech ventures is that some of the best people in your leadership team, whether they're co-founders or CEO or whatever, they often were former customers. There's somebody who they weren't looking for it necessarily. They weren't, applying for a job, but they came across it. They found a unique problem, and they recognized a unique problem that you were solving, and it really, resonated with them enough to come, stop what they're doing and go change their life and work with you.
It's a common pattern. I agree.
And so, I'm curious to think a little bit about, how the company came about. But, actually a very simple, basic question that I'm interested in is this word cloud native that, goes around. Of course, even we're using it. We're even naming it that. It means many things to many people. And in some ways it means something specific. What do you think it means? What does cloud native actually refer to?
What it means to me, it means that you design something for elasticity or resilience, as we call it. So it can scale dynamically. It can make use of virtual things like virtual infrastructure and services in the cloud. So it's kind of built on top of technologies that are virtualized, virtual machines, virtual infrastructure, anything as code. But it's also meant for to deliver on these promises, automatic, like dynamic scaling, easy to iterate against, being smart. It's kind of like the opposite of like what we did in the past, like dimension and spec something, and then basically it's set in stone. It's more of a, you notice the book Anti-Fragile, and it's kind of something, a system that is designed to be anti-fragile in my mind. So anti-fragile is not only elastic or resilient, but it's also self-learning. It can improve itself based on what's happening. And I mean, our bodies are doing this thing as in biology, but computer systems are not at that stage yet. But that's a nice ambition to go to. So cloud native is for me making use of all these cloud related technologies, like as a service, as code, virtual infrastructure, and working towards this goal of anti-fragile software stacks or applications.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's one of the reasons I asked, because it's sort of like big data was a few years ago. It was a term that would, at first it would mean something very specific, then it would mean many other things. And we even ourselves start asking, well, what does that mean? And will it mean something in 5 years, or will it just be normal,
For me, I think, and that's kind of my recurring theme, technology is never a goal. Also with big data, like why are you using it? Also with machine learning, AI, what's the purpose of it? What are you trying to achieve or improve with it? That's always in my mind. Otherwise, technology for technology, it's senseless to me. I mean, can be nice as an art form or something to look at or play with, but it needs to solve a problem. It needs to create value.
Now, my favorite definition I've heard of the word innovation, which is another one of these words that go around. My favorite definition was innovation is matching a need with a technology, and a technology can be anything, even a broomstick, but the need has to be there. There has to be a match, right? A unique one. And that's my favorite definition, I think.
Yeah, because that's an interesting one, because a lot of these cloud native technologies are actually solving a problem for a certain organization or example, Spinnaker, which is developed in-house by Netflix, and it works for their kind of stack. Kubernetes, based on the Borg, developed by Google, in-house for their needs. At some point, it's open source, so it becomes something bigger. It becomes part of the community. People start adopting it, reusing it. But you need to be very aware that it's always you need to have the problem that it solves. Otherwise you start to do cargo culting. Otherwise you basically think, oh well, let's use Spinnaker and then we become Netflix, or let's use Kubernetes and now we're Google. But the interesting thing is that these companies first thought of a solution and defined a problem that they had, and then they developed these technologies. So I think it's crucial that you understand the problem that you have and then figure out a solution for it, and then see if something is there that helps you. And that's also with FAMP. I mean, when we talk to companies or people, often I say, I don't think you have a problem that we solve. I mean,
well, the best innovations start by solving a problem for yourself. That's what Kubernetes, Spinnaker, everything you've mentioned is exactly that, right? And it sounds like that in a certain way, VAMP was probably also that for you. What was the unique problem that you saw that you said, we have to solve, and hadn't been solved before? What was it that spawned VAMP?
Yeah, I think it's still not solved, by the way, but we tried to help there. But no, we did a lot of stuff with e-commerce platforms and content management. Like these architectures were always like a CRM, ERP, CMS, e-commerce, digital asset. These big architectures. E-commerce typically was Hybris, Intershop, Demandware, IBM WebSphere Commerce, Oracle ATG, big monolithic Java applications that were also rendering all the front ends, spitting out these template-based UI. And when they were running in production, basically when the shop was open, it was super hard to iterate upon. Because if you needed to create new templates for front end, you basically needed to recompile almost the entire application again, which is like a JVM, like a big thing, especially for bigger international stacks. So how do you kind of slice out little pieces that you can iterate separately from the rest? That's kind of like why we went to microservices, I think, as an industry. Or in the past, it was like SOA, service-oriented architecture, OSGI kind of models, portlets, all that stuff. But then a new complexity is introduced because you're basically building a distributed application, a distributed system. So you need to have service discovery, you need to have tracing, you need to kind of manage all that stuff. So basically providing a management layer that handles the lifecycle management for your e-commerce stack. That's one of the reasons that we kind of started working on FAMP. So how can you do this in a smart way, doing zero downtime upgrading, shifting traffic based on versions. Maybe you want to move your German visitors first to a new front end and observe if this new front end actually behaves as it should, but also increases your revenue if you kind of hope that it will happen. So the second thing is basically everybody had challenges with scaling. If you have these big monoliths and you load balance them like 2, 3, 5, super expensive. And then we would load and stress test the hell out of these things for Black Monday and these scenarios. And every time it would crash again because you could never predict the real volume of traffic. And then, so you, outside of the peaks, you would be over dimensioned. So you would pay a shitload of money. And then while the peaks were there, you would be under proficient and you would still have big issues. So how can you have the application scale in a smart way? Because often the big scaling happens at the front, at the edge of the application, because if a lot of visitors come in, I mean, that's a funnel. There's only so much percentage that starts ordering, and there's only so much percentage that needs to hit your ERP, SAP backend, you know? And if you can scale your front end independently from your backend, that's much smarter. Smarter. So that's scaling based on real load, on real requirements. That's the second kind of pillar that we started working on. We call it SLA-based scaling. And the third one is everything basically becoming a data-driven validation. What if I change my configuration file? What if I move from a big instance to 5 small instances? What if I move from Google to Amazon? What do we expect that will happen? Can we kind of configure the system to measure these things? Latency, basket value increase. And can we have the system basically only do this for a small segment of visitors? So we reduce blast radius and validate and with enough significance, and then automatically either ramp it up if it works or move it back if it doesn't work.
It's basically taking a lot of the risk out of it. And like you say, it's brought in elasticity, flexibility, but then de-risked all these tests that, you know, normally you would have loved to have tried, but it would have disrupted everything else in your business.
Yeah. If you can even do it. I mean, the truth of the matter is that the real test is in production. You can only test so much in a lab, in your test and staging, but the real test is always in production. Your visitors are doing unpredictable things. The data that is generated is unpredictable. You need to basically be able to test in production. And that's super hard when you have this legacy kind of applications.
Yeah.
It's much easier if you have cloud, but still, I mean, it's hard for people that think in this monolithical legacy mindset. They stop at blue green, kind of. Okay, we have this big environment, then we duplicate the big environment into a new big environment, which is super costly, and then we put a load balancer and then flip the switch.
Yeah.
And we were like, why don't you put just a new version of this single service that you want to update into your production environment, not another environment, the same, and then have the load balancers sit like in between, and based on metrics that you see, dynamically start shifting things, which is currently called a service mesh. But when we started doing it 5 or 6 years ago, people were like, what? We're like, oh no, we put HA proxies all over the place. We create this mesh. Oh, is that possible? Yeah, of course it's possible.
Yeah.
So it's super powerful if you kind of start understanding the possibilities that it gives you. And that's our challenge, basically, because we aim squarely at product people, the people responsible for delivering functionalities to their end users, product managers, product owners, platform managers, which these people are typically not very technical, or they are not capable of handling all the technical decisions, but they need to get back in the driver's seat. Because like we said, it's a process. It has nothing to do with the technology. Technology enables, powers the process.
Right.
So if you're a product manager and you want to know what version of what service is running where, and if you want to control that client X is the first that is being delivered this new functionality, and you want to observe if the quality for this client is sufficient within SLA range, you need to describe that this is how you want to work, and you need to tell it to your technical people and say, make it so.
Yeah.
But now it doesn't happen because they're like, is that even possible?
Yeah.
So we need to kind of tell them this is possible, but you need to ask for it.
Yeah, and it's like kind of like trying to sell somebody on the idea of having a computer on your phone 2 years before the iPhone came out. You know, it's not even a thing they thought you should do, right?
Yeah.
So they
yeah. I always compare it to I had the first iPod.
Yeah.
Before that, we always had these Discmans, you know, with a wallet of CDs, and anybody would say, why do we need more?
Yeah.
I mean, I've got 20 CDs in my wallet, and then why do I need like thousands of music files?
Yeah.
And then the first time you grab this iPod, and then you started drawing that clicky white thing, and then you're like, oh, you know, all of a sudden it's like Steve Jobs really understood that thing with the iPhone and the iPod. He was like, the moment you experience this, you cannot go back anymore.
Suddenly you know it's possible. It happens so often. And one of the other interesting, I don't know if I would say it was a choice or if just how it ended up, but your business is based on the open source model, right? I mean, the product is open source in principle.
No, not anymore.
Okay. All right. What led to the change?
Yeah, so when we started 6 years ago, there was no Kubernetes. It was fairly early days with Docker. A lot of it was Mesos Marathon, Apache stuff. So we naturally, you need to figure things out, see what sticks. So our first kind of strategy was creating a community around it, build a community, and then start selling enterprise services.
Yeah,
kind of like Red Hat model. That didn't work out. I think because of the dependencies that we have on things like Kubernetes, containers, orchestrators. These days you can spin them up as a service.
Yeah,
so it's easy. But then you needed to basically build the entire Kubernetes stack. It was really hard. And the other thing was that we based our tech stack on Scala around that time, functional programming language, which is not super popular. It's not like Node or Go, you know. So I think the potential community was not there.
Yeah.
Then we shifted temporarily to closed open core, with a licensed core or a closed source core with open source things around it.
Oh.
And then I think at that time Elastic got into some heavy weather with Amazon forking their Elastic and then building it as a service. Yeah. And at the time we were also in Redmond with Microsoft talking, and then they brought in Brandon Burns from Google, one of the guys that started Kubernetes at Google. And Brandon Burns is a smart guy, so he started talking about you can make money at the bottom, really close to the iron. You can make money at the top, really at the business layer, but in between it's hard. And it made a lot of sense to me. So I was like, I think we need to move to SaaS, because if you look at Tableau or ClickView or Salesforce, you don't care what kind of databases or technologies they use underneath. You just use it for the business value that it provides to you. And I think that's also with FAMP. We needed to shift away from the more technical fetish thing almost, and move to providing real business value to people that basically want to bypass or IT or move faster. And that's why we went to SaaS. That doesn't mean that we don't use open source technologies. We do. It doesn't mean that we don't work with open source technologies. We are fully like cloud native compatible with Elastic and Prometheus and all these things, Grafana, Kibana. And it doesn't mean that we don't provide open source tooling or components around what we do. But the core of it is a SaaS service that we.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, there's benefits to both approaches, and I think the benefit of SaaS, or even if it was a closed source product, is that you have a lot of control over the quality. And in this case, it's literally quality control that we're working with here. That's a really important factor. So that makes a lot of sense.
And we did a lot of on-premises installations. They're still running on-premise installations of FAMP, or managed installations also, which made sense at the time. But now we believe that there's a huge market opportunity with companies that are not like the top tier enterprise Netflix, Spotify style companies, because they have a lot of engineering talent and capabilities in house. But there's this big market underneath that is not super focal or sexy, but they run a good business. They run software as a service companies, platforms. They run e-commerce platforms. They make money. They have an open shop, and they kind of hit that first kind of modernization challenge. Like maybe they're like 3 to 5 years in, they start to add the first microservices because they need to innovate and modernize. They need to scale, and then they get into this challenge that we solve. But they don't have like 10 DevOps or SREs engineers. They don't want to hire 10 DevOps or SREs engineers. They basically want to deliver features to their clients because they run a shop, they run a platform. So we believe there's a huge opportunity to service those organizations. Let's call them SMB plus, kind of. That don't have a lot of opinion on how you should do this release orchestration, but have a need for it. And our promise is that with FAMP, you can basically install and get up and running within 3 clicks. Which is a big change from playing around with all these point solutions and open source tools and making them work together, and not having a nice UI for your business colleagues. So our promise is really focused on those people. And that's why a SaaS is crucial, because like with Salesforce, if the alternative is waiting 2 years for a custom implementation of an ERP system or a CRM system, or grab your credit card, sign up, and build your own little CRM form, and you're working within a day. That's what our ambition is. Jokingly, I always say I want to be the WordPress of release orchestration. Basically, it's democratized software. It shouldn't be smoke and mirrors and like hand waving. It's just click, 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 agent install, and best practice release policies we provide, out of the box metrics and budgets, and off you go.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately, I mean, that goes back to that advantage of doing a managed service or even a closed thing, is that there's this myth that open source is somehow free, and of course it isn't free.
No.
A nice example: we both live in Amsterdam. The housing market here is ridiculous. So I think, oh, the houses are too expensive. But you know what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to go to the hardware store and buy the materials and build my own house, because
no.
then that's basically open source. If that's my expertise, if that's my core business, then maybe I will build a house. But for most of us,
that's true. It is. It's the same discussion that we had, of course, with moving to cloud. 10 years ago or 6 years ago. It's a TCO discussion and an ROI discussion. It's CAPEX, OPEX. It's buy versus build.
And you basically add opportunity cost to that too.
It's. I mean, you can grab all these open source tools and kind of MacGyver them together. And then what happens if the guy or girl that did that leaves? What happens if team A and team B and team C have different approaches? How do you scale this out of in your organization? Maintenance cost, all these things, support. It's a bigger discussion than only I pay a license for software. And I mean, as a SaaS, you can make it quite transparent. I think it's important to also make it easy to understand the pricing structure. The value drivers should be apparent. It's basically based on usage, user scale, team size. And then it's easy, because I've been working on the other side as a consultant. So if I didn't understand the pricing schema and it wasn't predictable, I wouldn't sell it. I wouldn't sell it to my clients. I wouldn't buy it. It needs to be totally predictable. I would need to know what I'm paying for, what I use, and it needs to be budgeted for.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it makes a lot of sense. So this is the cliche question now that I think we're all going to get. How is the whole COVID thing affecting your business? Is it either more or less, your company, your customers' companies? How have you experienced this whole thing?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think overall we're doing good, fine. The thing is, we're of course servicing online platforms. So online is a thing now. It's much more important. So that's one. Two, people are of course much more careful these days. So we're Dutch, so that's one thing. We have a European kind of mindset, a Dutch mindset. So basically, doing more with less, being more efficient, is becoming a thing, and it comes natural to us anyway. How to be smarter with your scaling strategies, how to be less risk. How to basically manage your risk better, and how to use the data to basically observe if everything works as expected, and also, I mean, the more people are working online, the faster you need to move, because people, they're more demanding. They need more from you, more ordering, more features. I look at video conferencing. I mean, if you look at the feature set of Zoom versus Teams, how they scale, you need to be able to iterate fast enough. Otherwise, you're kind of lagging. Most companies grasp this concept, and so for us, we're doing. I mean, we had like record weeks of incoming requests. Demos. It's really, it's becoming people understand the problem, understand that they need a solution, and as an organization, we were distributed or partly distributed, working anyway with people all over Europe. So for us, as an organization, it didn't change anything.
Yeah, no, I think my experience has been that it's actually, in some ways business goes up, it gets more busy, but it's more focused. Like, people are more focused on what's important. Before it was all what was possible, but now it's really like narrowing down, this is important, and then doubling down. And I think that's at least how I've experienced it.
Yeah, that's true. And also with a lot of technical debt, I mean, making the system more efficient, making systems more robust, handling all that stuff that needs to be fixed. I mean, in the past, people would move forward very fast and say, okay, let's build, expand, grow.
Yeah.
And now they're kind of looking back and say, okay, maybe this is the time now to start fixing some of the technical debt. And
Yeah.
we're squarely in this non-functionals. So non-functionals are technical debt typically.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, it's. I mean, we all want to have this COVID thing gone,
Yeah.
but I think for the online industry, for the digital industry, it's not worse than before.
Yeah. I mean, we're
On
here.
the contrary,
We're even doing this here like this. So this,
yeah.
that's great. So I think as a final, as a closer, I'll take an interesting twist. You mentioned earlier you were a DJ. You made music.
Yeah.
I was a little more of a band guy. I had a band in the 90s, so I was dealing with other people, But I always found there was so many similarities, a band and a startup were almost the same. You had to say somebody has to be the leader, somebody has to have different personalities. There's 1,000 ways to fail and maybe 3 ways to succeed. These are these sort of factors. How is making music like starting a company? What are the similarities?
Yeah, that's a really cool question. I think it has to do with, do you have like a global idea? Do you have like a
vision?
Maybe vision is even too big of a word already. Do you have like a little kind of seed of an idea that you think might work?
Yeah.
And then are you not afraid to get going? Just you need to start somewhere. So basically, even if and not be afraid to share. I mean, in the past you had this book like The Secret kind of thing, which is like, if you talk about something or you write it, then it will happen. Of course, the reality is that if you don't share your ideas, people will never know and they cannot help you. So if you share your creative ideas and how bad they are doesn't really matter. People will basically try to help you because nobody wants to have other people failing, and most people want to help you. So making music is also being, I mean, you need to open up. You need to be, not afraid to open your kind of mind to other people and have other people give you feedback.
Yeah.
And that's, I think it's the same. But you need to get started. Just get going. Even though you think, I don't know where this will end.
Yeah.
And have an idea, a kernel of an idea.
Yeah.
And then share and open up and see what happens.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, like what you said right there, people are on your side, basically. We get nervous and they want you. People want you to succeed. And one of the things I love is when somebody tells me, "Hey, I got a great idea for a startup, but I'm not going to tell you." And it's like, well, probably 1,000 other people have the same idea anyway.
Yeah. Ideas are cheap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ideas are easy. Execution.
Yeah, exactly. It's doing it is hard. And, a lot of people had the same idea as Bill Gates, or Steve Jobs, for that matter. In fact, they kind of had a similar idea, but ultimately they executed.
Yeah, and also Google was the last search engine.
Yeah.
So don't be afraid to be the last.
What's interesting, Google really didn't even start till after the .com bubble was finished. They weren't really any part of that. All of the good stuff started later.
So timing is a strange thing also. So you don't need to be the first one.
No.
Maybe it's even better not to be the first one.
Yeah, let the other ones go first, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's great. I really appreciate it, Olaf. This has been a great talk. It's great to get to know you a bit, get to know more about Vamp.
Thanks.
Look forward to having more of these. Maybe we'll have a follow-up chat, maybe going more into the technical detail at one point. That would be really great. So thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And I really enjoyed this talk and great questions. So it was fun. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right.
Have a good day. Stay safe.
Yep. Thanks. Well, I'll save these recordings. It'll probably take us a couple of weeks to get things edited a bit, but I'll of course share it with you before we
great
with it. So very good.
Spam the internet.
Absolutely. And so one of these days when it's possible again, we'll have to have a biertje somewhere.
Yeah, biertje. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Great. All right. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Have a good day.
You too.
And we'll talk later.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye. See you.
Bye.